Welcome to the Tao of Pizza, where we feature top logistics leaders, entrepreneurs, and supply chain innovators and share their inspiring stories with a holistic twist.
Mark Hiddleson here, host of the Tao of Pizza podcast, where I talk with top industry innovators in the warehousing, logistics, and supply chain business with a holistic twist. Before introducing Steve Waller, this episode is brought to you by Specialized Storage Solutions. Now listen, I've been in the logistics and storage industry for several decades, and I know I don't look that old, but it's true. We provide leading warehouse storage solutions nationwide. So basically, if you have a warehouse that needs racks, shelving, carts, conveyors, or mezzanines, we help with the design, engineering, installation, inspections, and repairs to help clients optimize their logistics operations. And you know, Steve, some people don't even realize we can actually help with permit acquisition services. We take a holistic look at your entire business supply chain ecosystem to develop the resources for continually improving your operations. I even give out my personal email address for podcast listeners. So if you're ready to take your warehouse to the next level, send me an email at markhiddleson@aol.com. Now, today's guest is Steve Waller. He was born and raised in New Zealand and started his early career in advertising, which took him to London in the early 70s, where he joined DHL International in 1975 as the number 6 employee. He enjoyed a 25-year career with DHL in the UK, Europe, the Middle East, and the US. After retiring from DHL in 2001, Steve became the CEO of 2 turnaround international courier express businesses, one in New York and the other in LA. In 2010, he relocated to Napa as Vice President of Operations / COO at Wine Direct, a direct-to-consumer wine shipper. For the past 8 years, he's been with Western Wine Services, operating 10 warehouses, totaling close to 2 million square feet under roof. Steve, welcome to the Tao of Pizza.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, this is awesome. It looks like you're sitting at your beautiful winery.
That's my vineyard in the background. That's what you're asking. Yeah.
Yeah.
An estate vineyard here.
It looks amazing. I wanted to ask you, I think you may have told me before that you were in advertising, but how did you go from the advertising business to DHL? How did that happen?
So I was in advertising in New Zealand, working for McCann Erickson, which was a big American firm that had invested down there. But I left them and went to London to take up an advertising position there. That was a 2-year appointment. A year and a half into it, the company that I was working for was a startup company, failed. And so I joined DHL. How did I join DHL? I was playing rugby with David Allen, who founded DHL in Europe. And I said, I need a job for 6 months, Dave. Then I'm going back to New Zealand. And he said, well, you can be a courier. Bring your car around on Monday morning and you can work for DHL. They had just started. I was the 6th employee. So I did that. That was meant to be a 6-month deal. It turned into a 25-year career. So I got out of the advertising business and got into the delivery business, the express delivery business. And DHL, of course, is now the largest international express delivery business, owned by Deutsche Post, competing with FedEx and UPS. But overseas, they're very big. Here, they're a smaller operation in the US.
But DHL, they are bigger than either FedEx or UPS, right? Or
in the non-US world, yes. They're the go-to express carrier, in the Middle East and Asia, South America, Africa, Europe. Yeah.
And so you're a rugby player. I never realized that you were a rugby player.
Of course. I'm from New Zealand. Everyone plays rugby in New Zealand.
Oh, I love that. I don't know how to play the rugby or anything. I like football. I just like chasing the ball and running into people. I play American football and basketball and baseball, but so I have some good friends in rugby that I've always really liked you for some reason. I couldn't figure it out. That must be it. That's it. It's the rugby.
Well, you probably don't have many friends.
Yeah. I I didn't realize you started out as a courier for DHL. So
Sure.
and so where did you go? Like what was the steps from courier to,
So, I didn't join DHL as a career position.
right. Yeah.
My plan was to go back to New Zealand at the end of 2 years and take up my advertising career or continue it back in New Zealand. That was the plan. Um, but I needed a job just for 6 months. I enjoyed living in London, my wife and I. And so I wrote to my principals in New Zealand and said, look, I'll take care of myself for the next 6 months, but I'll come back and work with you, my principal back in New Zealand in advertising in 6 months. So I just needed a job. So this courier thing, I didn't even know what a courier was, pick up and deliver parcels. Dave Allen said, well, why don't you come and do that? And you can do it for 6 months and then be on your way. Well, once I got into it, I enjoyed it. And it was a meteoric rise. DHL was expanding greatly. So I was the sixth employee. We had an operation in London only. 5 years later, in 1980, by 1980, so I joined them in 75. Within 5 years, there's a couple of thousand employees. We had operations all over Europe, the Middle East, in Africa. And then I transferred in 1981 to the U.S. operation. I'd spent time in the Middle East. I spent time in Iran. I was when I was mid-20s, and spent a couple of years down there just before the revolution. I didn't cause that.
Yeah.
I out of there before that happened. But DHL expanded greatly throughout the Middle East, in Saudi and Qatar, Kuwait, UAE, Bahrain, Oman, all through that area. No one else was there. No one else was doing it. We went there first, the hard areas, and opened them up, as well as the across Europe. So and I became, an executive with DHL in Europe very quickly on the sales and marketing side, primarily, and transferred to the U.S. operation of DHL in the Bay Area here in San Francisco in 1981 as a regional sales manager, and then grew with them and became COO and executive vice president, and was a senior guy for quite a few years before I retired in 2001. I left them. It was a bad decision. I should have stayed with them, actually. Yeah, yeah. If I'd stayed, but I moved on anyway. Things like that happen. I went out in the cold world to make it on my own after being in that envelope, say for 25 years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you left DHL, even if it wasn't the greatest financial move, because we may have never met if you didn't branch out on your own.
Thank you. That's probably true.
That's a really cool story, because you had no idea. And so what were some of the things that prepared you? I mean, because that's a rocket ship, right? If you go from 0 to
Right.
2,000 employees in 5 years. So what are some of the things that you think prepared you? I mean, for that was just a great opportunity. A lot of people get great opportunities, but if you're not ready for it, it goes away. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think, it's a good question. Certainly nothing really prepared me for that, because I hadn't done it before, and that meteoric growth and in foreign environments. However, I think being a Kiwi helped me, because New Zealanders are great travelers. They often leave their home country to go overseas, usually for a few years, and just travel the world and take up jobs in Europe for a short while. So there was an adventurous spirit that's part of that culture and part of the New Zealand character, if you will. So I had that going for me. I wasn't fearful of anything. So when they said, would you like to go down to Tehran and run that for a bit? And I'd only been in the company for 6 months, by the way. This was in 76. I joined them in 75. And so I did that. So not being fearful and having that Kiwi adventurous spirit certainly was helpful. There were quite a few Kiwis and Aussies in the DHL environment based on the London operation. So I did that and came back to the UK after a couple of years and was the marketing director for Europe and the Middle East for DHL. And because I used my advertising experience to do that job, and I introduced the first advertising items and brochures and things like that, wrote them all myself. So you had to be a self starter, you had to be something of an entrepreneur, and you had to be unfearful, I guess. Um, and there were a bunch of guys like me in the company that established DHL in Europe, Middle East, Africa. I wasn't the only one by far. There was a bunch
Yeah.
of similar characteristics.
And were they all rugby players in the beginning? Was there a
A
lot?
lot of them were.
Because that's another thing I was thinking. That's a tough sport. I mean, you talk about not having fear. I love what you said about travel because I believe that, and I have some of my best friends like, especially if you're young, and I didn't realize that was part of your culture in New Zealand. And by the way, I got this shirt in Australia. I know you're a shirt guy, so I wore this. I wore this. I
Very
wore this
impressive.
shirt, but the no fear, the traveling to kind of just see the world differently, or you
Yeah.
put yourself in a situation where you do have survival. That's awesome. Then being surrounded, like you said, never hurts to be surrounded by people with the
Right.
same values. Um, so I
That
also
that's
go ahead. I'm
mhm.
sorry.
No.
Uh, so I wanted to ask you because you've told me this before, and I love it. But what makes London so cool to you? One of the time you told me you thought that's the best city in the world or something. I mean, why is it? Why is London?
Well, my father said, and he didn't write the phrase, but when a man is tired of London, he is tired of life. I think that was Samuel Johnson or some great philosopher. It's well, when I went there, I was in my early 20s,
Uh-huh.
and it took me by storm. And that was common for Kiwis and Aussies to go there, and I just loved living there. It's cosmopolitan. It's huge. There's so much going on. Coming from a small country, you always are looking out. Where you're always
Okay.
looking out to the world. You're not looking really in New Zealand. That's small. You know it. You're looking out. What's out there? And so when you go to London, which is really, I think, a principal city of the world,
Oh yeah.
and the history of London and the culture and things like that. So it just was magical. But also, I liked working throughout Europe as well and traveling throughout Europe as we were setting up offices for DHL. Um, it was a carefree kind of existence. We didn't have training for it per se, but we just went and did it and learned as we went. And it was sort of an action oriented concept. We didn't plan studiously the
Uh-huh.
opening of a new office.
Yeah.
We would say, look, we need to open Athens. Was one of the offices I opened, Athens in Greece in 1978, I believe. Um, and my information there was a pad listed with a dozen or so companies that had asked us to open an Athens office. These were international companies that we served, and so I took that list, if you will, and went down there, and set up an apartment and an office that we used, and started looked up the addresses for these companies and started calling on them, and we were shipping within a week. I mean, so within a week of going down there, we were operating. I got hold of a lawyer and we set up a company and set up the accounting firm. It was very much an action oriented, not too much of a planning thing, and
Yeah.
very fast moving. So, once you've done one or two, you got pretty experienced at it. You just go and do the next one. It's just a different city in a different country.
That's awesome. I like to call it, and I'm like this too. I like to fire and then aim and then get ready.
Yeah,
It's not get ready, aim,
yeah,
fire. It's fire
yeah.
And then whether you aim or get ready doesn't matter as long as you
It was
fly.
very much that way. That was very much that way. I mean, in the modern world, it's not done that way. It's done in a more a planned way. But that certainly was how that company expanded in those early years, for sure.
Yeah, and I think people, I mean, people still think that way, and I mean, like the companies that take off so fast like that, they do. There must be some element of that, taking chances, be the first one, the boldest, the first ones to get there.
Being first, being as a critical point.
Yeah,
The Middle East, for instance, a difficult environment to work in. The mail service was poor. The political environment was challenging in some way, and the cultural environment, but that didn't stop us. So we went into that market and started setting up a reliable delivery system in and out, a reliable delivery system of documents and packages to get into the Middle East, which didn't exist. It was reliant upon the postal service, which was very poorly performing there. So there was a huge pent up demand for reliability and security. And we came in and we said, we'll do that. And we set up operations and made alliances and partnerships with folks and got it going very quickly. And so, in the difficult areas of the world, and Middle East or Africa, South America to some degree, which were more uh, challenging than doing business, say, in the United States or Canada or Europe, that's where DHL went and did business in the more difficult areas. And that's the culture that was developed, and that to this day, that is the history of the company, and why DHL is so strong in those areas.
yeah, yeah. So that's an excellent. It's a good segue into my next question, and it's I have to share. I'll be honest with you, but only about this one thing. When we first met, you went to work for a client. I think it was I was looking about it, it's about 10 years ago that a good friend of mine had been. He took his position, and we had served on nonprofits together for 5 years, and we'd done helped him open buildings in Southern California, uh, Central California with several companies. And I was going in, I'm like, man, at that point, you guys had hired a consultant to do a lot of the stuff that I do, and there were multiple vendors, and I was like, man, this is just going to be a big time waster for me. So I'm gonna have to go in there. I'll have to be graceful about it, but I'm gonna have to say, look, at this really isn't how we do business. Say something that, and but when we met, you gave me uh I brought those things up, and you assured me that you weren't gonna, that you'd value my time, even though you had a consultant, because I was looking, consultants specialize in a lot of things. This is what I do. And a lot of the ideas, we could do it without this guy. And I have a aversion to consultants. I always run the other direction. But you made me feel safe that it like you value client vendor relationships.
Right.
And so what, and it's not just something that's like, oh, hey, it's nice to do that, but share with why that makes a difference, not just to do the right thing, but why does that make things work better for both?
Well, I do value uh, client vendor relationships, and I'm slow to change a vendor. If the vendor is working well, I'm not going to change that vendor just for a few cents if they have proven themselves. And so that's something I do to this day. I like to establish relationships with vendors, usually two or three in the particular strategic areas, not just one, and stay with them. And to become a non-vendor with us means that something has to have happened on the service side or on the cost side that doesn't make it sensible for us to continue. But I'm not one who holds an axe over a vendor and leaves them walking on glass and thinking that they're always at risk. No, I play the opposite way. That's proven to be, over my years in the business world, to be successful as a strategy. I always say when someone solicits me and I have, say, 3 vendors in a particular area that I'm not looking for a fourth one, I tell the solicitous vendor, look, I can't take you on, as you wouldn't want me to fire you unceremoniously just because someone came in the door with the latest offer. And they understand that, and it works. I listen to vendors all the time. I listen to salesmen. I always give them time. I don't dismiss them. Um, I always think that I was in that case cold calling, and so I respect that, and I give them a shot, at least to say their piece.
Yeah, that's great. And you do, that's one of the things, probably 95%, or might be 90%, it could be 100% of what I've learned over, my 25 plus year career. A lot of stuff I learned it from a vendor that they
Yeah,
taught me. I mean, I wasn't an expert in racking until I had a racking vendor that, somebody higher up in the company took me under the wing. They shared about that, or conveyors the same way. And in the long run, it seems like you can call sometimes if if you're in a pinch, you can call those people or do something a little bit extra. So the loyalty goes a long way.
right. The you mentioned that project. You're talking about the Zephyr project.
Yeah,
Yeah, that building was about 100,000 square feet, and we were moving from where we were. I had that 1 or 2 years with Zephyr Express, which I enjoyed greatly too, before I joined Western Wine Services about 8 years ago. Um, but they were moving, and we needed to rack that entire building and jam it in because we really had too much stuff for 100,000 square feet, which I learned afterwards.
yeah.
But the racking that we put in there was, and you were, I forget exactly how we first, oh, we met prior to that at maybe Wine Direct.
No,
Um,
that was the first meeting. Was the Zephyr meeting?
oh, the Zephyr meeting, was it?
Yeah,
So, and so, I didn't know you, but we got to know each other, and I certainly took your advice. You had actually de-racked the building that we had here in Napa before we went to Benicia. So we did that, and I greatly respected your expertise and knowledge. You're the guy doing it. Yes, we had a consultant in there. Actually, I hadn't hired that consultant. I'd sort of inherited the consultant. He was a smart man and did a nice job. But certainly, you were the boots on the ground guy, and that project turned out to be spectacularly successful, on time, on budget, and we went 5 high there, I believe. We crammed the racking in. We went very high on it. Um, I remember distinctly um, the map started from the center of the building, right, and that was
yeah,
where the first the first hole was drilled, and
yeah,
it worked out. It worked out for 100,000 square feet, and we were when it was done, we were within an inch all around. So
yeah.
that impressed me,
Yeah, that
and
I will give
so
the guy.
that was
His
a
name,
good feather in your cap.
consultant was Bob Cattell, and I don't know the
Yeah,
name of his company, but he did. That is, I'll give him that. There was a starting point, and it was 1 inch off a building column or something, and that
yeah.
was, and then everything. It's 135,000 square foot warehouse. I think
Okay.
it was VNA, right? There were very narrow aisles for.
No, they weren't very. We didn't do VNA there.
You did it
No,
just,
not VNA equipment.
but
I
you
think they were.
had
I think
some.
they were 12 foot.
You were using order pickers because you had some
Yeah,
levels that were single case high,
yeah,
cross, or double case
yeah,
high,
yeah.
and then there were full pallet, half pallet. I mean, that layout, and Bob did that. That was a really, uh, I mean, he had it down to 1 inch. And you're right, we started here, and then we ended up,
Yeah.
and so uh, that
I
was
took the
nice.
credit. I took the credit for that with my principal, Henry Weingroup, owned Zephyr, and they were hugely impressed that we managed to get that job done and the transfer done out of Napa over to there in a really short space of time, and it just worked from day one. So
Yeah.
I grabbed the credit for that as much as I could.
And you deserve a lot of the credit. That was I was going to take the credit because it's my show. But it's true what you inherited. That was another reason I was a little gun shy, because they said, well, we're going to move this building that we have in Napa into Benicia. And I think the Napa building was the same. It was 70, 80,000 square feet. That
Yeah.
building was pretty big. And I thought, wow, these guys are biting off more they can chew. The new guy isn't going to be able to handle. But you, that was an excellent project. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great project. And then we've worked ever since,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. And you've been uh, a great client.
You're a pain in the ass occasionally, but mostly it works well.
Yeah, yeah. You always well, I'm always trying to get the client to do most of the heavy lifting, right? So uh so that's it, client vendor relationships. And so what, so you've been a great client for me. We're joking a lot, but that's a big project. It was a high stakes project. I mean, if things go wrong on that,
Yeah.
it was on time and it was on budget. But if you look at it, if it wasn't, that's a business that you're running every day, because you guys really didn't slow down shipping, right? It was like a weekend or something, or
Yeah.
that everything stayed on.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. But we had, I think I forget exactly, but it was over a weekend, maybe 4 days or something, Friday to Monday, where we couldn't ship, which is, really a stressful situation
yeah,
for our customers, Henry Wine Group and others, because that means they couldn't ship out orders. But we got it done over that we transferred all the product, I think, over a 4 day period, 24 hours a day. And I remember I stayed up, I think, for about 2.5 days, you know, uh, sort of just watching it and going back and forth. And I crashed and then for a bit of sleep and then came back on the last day. But everyone pulled their weight on that project. And yeah, it was a nice project.
yeah, yeah. I had Scott Avila was running.
Yeah,
He was working for you in that.
he was the warehouse manager there.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you've been a great client. I mean, for us, it was a great client if somebody's running 10 buildings with just under 2 million square feet. That's a great client for us. They've
Yeah.
given us a lot of referrals, which I appreciate, because it means you trust us. And but what kind of share with us with Western, because what is your ideal client? Because there's a lot of different things in the wine
Okay.
industry, and you guys, you're one of the best. But what's your ideal client?
Okay. So perhaps just a little word of intro of
Yeah,
who we are. You
yeah,
did it in the beginning, but just to add a little bit of flesh to that, but not too much. So we are Western Wine Services. We're 1.7 million plus square feet. Um, we have about 9 million cases on hand. We're 10 buildings, about 200 employees here in American Canyon, southern Napa County. Um, when you combine our operation here, which I manage, with our East Coast operation in New Jersey, when you put the two together, they have 3 or 4 million square feet out there, so they're a larger operation. But when you put the two together, we're the largest independent, privately owned wine storage business in the country. When I say independent, I'm not comparing us to the Gallo of the world, who have huge warehouses, but those customers who come to us, we're the largest in the US. We have competitors, of course, but only where I'm at, 2 or 3, what I would call strategic competitors. There are many smaller warehouses, but ones of a substantial size. There's only a handful. The ideal client for our model is the larger volume client. So, we have a lot of square footage we've got to keep full. So I like to say that a client with 5,000 to 10,000 cases as a start point is the type of client that I'm seeking. And many clients that we have are in the hundreds of thousands of cases in commercial wine storage. Our customers are wineries and importers. And we do, in addition to wine, we do spirits. We're maybe 80% wine and about 20% spirits. We have some very large international customers who use us for their storage, and a lot of that is spirits. So the ideal client is one on a scale basis, 5 or 10,000 cases and up. I can't take every customer at 2,000, 1,000, 3,000 startups, customers, or a new craft customer, unless I think they're going to really grow fast, and then I do take them. But
They
I
could
would
be
be
the next
inundated.
DHL.
Yeah, there are many. I can't take every customer that is there in terms of scale and size. We would lose our span of control or our customer service control, and I'm very, very conscious of making sure that we can give the customer service that we need. So yes, we could add customer service people. Yes, we could add sales people, but there's a scale and a model that has worked for us that I have actually promoted since I've been here over the last 8 years, and we've had a good run. So it's not broken. So I don't see any reason to really fix it. So that's that's that. Now the perfect customer has got to have a high degree of expectation, because we can fulfill that high degree of expectation. It's not just a price game. If it's a price game, that's not our business. And the customer has to, and they are, in our business, accuracy, inventory integrity, picking orders correctly, picking them on time, receiving without appointments, which we do throughout the day and into the evening. So we do some things like that to make ourselves available constantly to the customer. But the most important thing that we offer is accuracy and integrity of inventory, integrity of shipments, no misshipments, no unders and overs or wrong products. It happens occasionally, of course, but our percentage is infinitesimal. And that is worth money to customers. If you take the lower cost customer, but you have a higher degree of mistakes, those mistakes are very costly, and it can cost my customers their customers.
Yeah.
So that's the pitch I make, and that's how we position ourselves as the best in class on an operational efficiency and service basis. And I seek customers who have those same desires and characteristics and needs. And that's about it.
Yeah. You want to find the best solution, and it's not, a lot of times we're the most competitive price just because of my experience of what we're doing, but that's not our customer's number one criteria is strength for doing business. And like you said, the cost is over a year, and especially one mistake can make up the difference. If you're saving,
right,
one mistake can make up that savings.
No, absolutely.
What are some of the things that you do, like just the simple things? I've noticed, like one of the things I notice, I'm in a lot of warehouses. Your warehouse is almost always, I don't want to say perfectly swept, but compared to other places, it's the floor, you're just shining the floors. And some people think, well, we could be picking orders, or we could be doing this. Why is that important? I mean, I just noticed the clients that do that, they're better operations. I mean, so.
Well, housekeeping is what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
And Western is known for it. We scrub the floors every day, every building. So we have 7 scrubbers, machines, and 7 scrubber personnel. Some of them do a couple of buildings, but we wash the floors every single day. And it never fails to impress customers when I take a walkthrough with them, who say, wow, your floors are so clean and tidy, and your warehouse is so clean and tidy. So we place a lot of emphasis on housekeeping, good housekeeping. When I walk the floor, I'll pick up a piece of wood, pick up some plastic, whatever. We all do it. That's just the Western way. It's Western culture, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge impression when you're with a customer and you're walking down, you bend down and pick up a piece of a broken pallet, that's sit on the floor. And so we do place a tremendous amount of emphasis there, because if we do good housekeeping, then we will also do good operations. We'll do good accuracy. We'll do good safety. And that seems to resonate with the customer. It's commonly mentioned. So I love getting prospective customers into our warehouse just to let them see it and touch it, look at the racking, look how tidy we make it, look how tidy our lanes are, look at our housekeeping. And that translates into good operations and good accuracy, and seems to have been a very successful model for us. So yes, we do that. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, and it is. So it's one of those things. That was another question, or I know in our business we deal with it's a lot of third party logistics, and that's basically you're a 3PL, right? You're storing, you're warehousing for somebody else, and the best salespeople are the ones who are really good at operations. Like I've noticed in this business, and it's kind of like you said, the scrubbing the floors, it's nice because that's kind of a sales thing. Is the average, you're polishing the apple, it looks, but you get the advantages. When I go into the cleaner warehouses, they have less rack damage, right? Like that's the stuff I look. If you got somebody's got a bunch of damaged uprights and stuff, there's usually shrink wrap on the floor, and it's not. Warehouse, they're busy. Like you guys are pulling 9 million cases. It's easy to try to well, we'll get to that later. Or the thing about picking up wood, I learned that early in my career. The very best managers, and there's probably 40 or 50 people I know, they won't ever go past a piece of pallet bigger than that big without bending down to pick it up, and you go, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. So we're getting kind of close to the end, and I wanted to ask you to share as much as you can. You guys have done some automation in the past few years. Share as much as you can about that. I call it the robots. Tell us about the robots.
Okay. Yeah, well, that was a lot. That particular project we call Robotop, ROBOTOP, and it's a robotic automated system for making tray packs. So cases of wine, when they're sold commonly by the pallet to, say, Costco like their pallets coming in already cut into tray packs. So they can just put that pallet on the floor. You'll see it when you go to Costco. And the cases are just the cases of wine, but the tops have been cut off down about 3 or 4 inches. So making them into what we would call a tray pack. So all of those tops have got to be cut off. And we have customers who sell to Costco in the high volume area, hundreds of thousands of cases, getting into the millions in some cases. And so we were doing that for the customer, and we decided to automate it. So we put into, just in the last year and a half, we established a robotic system where we can feed in the pallets of wine uncut at one end, and they go through a robotic depalletization system, a cutting system, a top remover system, and then a repalletization robotic system, and then an automated shrink wrapping operation, and that completes it. And so you put a pallet in one end and it comes out the other end, 25 cases per minute. So a pallet's 2.5 minutes, completely made into tray packs, repalletized, corner boards, slip sheets between the layers, wrapped professionally in 2.5 minutes. So that operation is available. And so customers who have that need, on a one-off basis or on a continuous basis, can avail themselves of that system. It's unique. No one else has got it. It was a unique system when it was built for us. It wasn't the second or third of a system. It was the first system built. to do this, and so that was the major investment we've done in robotics or in automation within the warehouse recently. Of course, the technology we have for order processing and for receiving and for inventory control is our own home proprietary system, Enzio, it's called. It's a proprietary system that we built and programmed and made over the years. It predated me, actually, of course. I've only been here 8 years. So that system is an excellent system. And I'm a believer in having proprietary systems in warehouses and in warehouse management systems. Every time we've gone and tried to buy something off the shelf in prior lives and prior businesses that I've been in, it really doesn't work. You really have to write the thing from scratch anyway, because if you've got to write it for your specific needs and requirements, and they're all different, one company to the next. So I'm a believer in proprietary systems, actually, for WMS. It seems to, oops, hold on. Sorry about that. Things happen,
Yeah.
I'm in my office, even though I'm in the vineyard. So what was I saying?
About the
the proprietary
automation.
system. Yeah, the
well,
proprietary.
proprietary. Yeah, and that's a unique view. I want to hear more about that. So
Yeah.
you think a proprietary system versus going with like Manhattan or Red Prairie? There's a million.
Yeah, I
Build
do.
it, especially third-party logistics. I think too, because like you said, every company's different how they.
Yeah, they're different. I mean, I'm not an IT guy, and but being over many years in different companies and trying to bring in new technologies, we've always struggled with off the shelf, what they call off the shelf, and then you customize it to you. Well, the customization operation takes just as much time and money and effort or more than doing it from scratch in the beginning with the proprietary way. So that's just, that's just my one man's opinion on it, having seen it, watched it. And we did that here, and we maintain it. And so that is a proprietary system here on the technology side. What else?
Well, the thing is, and I have some of my friends are in that industry, but they don't work for the big companies like Manhattan. There's two I can think of. Mark at I can't even think of the name of his company, but I know a few guys. They have smaller companies, but they basically do that. A lot of companies don't have their own IT guy. Like you had it in house, they could build it. But then there's a lot of people who are, I wouldn't say freelancer, Path Guide. Path Guide Technologies is Mark. I think you might have met him. We hosted an event. That's been about 5 years ago since we hosted that event.
Oh,
and we were
wow.
on the panel.
Yeah.
I can't believe how much time flies, but that's a lot of what they say. Everyone, they'll say things like, well, you never got fired for using IBM or something like that. But it is true. They can customize solutions for using a smaller boutique company who's basically going to help you build your own homegrown.
Right. That's my experience, Mark. That's my experience.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other views, but that's what I've learned, if you will.
Yeah. So we're getting down to the end. So I wanted to, I always love to ask people either what's your favorite podcast? What are some of do you have conferences you go to, or favorite tools and software that you use?
The favorite, podcasts, I don't do a lot of them. And that's why I've been avoiding you for so long since you asked me. It's not something that I'm familiar with or reach out to. I'm an avid reader and an avid student of business. And so I get my information from reading and staying in touch very much in that way, not only in business, but history and biographies as well. So I can't comment on the podcast universe, unfortunately.
Well, then this is your
I'll
favorite
have a look at
podcast.
this one and see how it goes, and maybe I'll get more, more into it and more knowledgeable. about the characteristics and the benefits for sure. But I'm doing this because you're my friend and someone I respect, and you've asked me a few times, and I thought I'll do it. Thanks.
Yeah, and we appreciate it. So Sharon, I know you read the Wall Street Journal every day, and then you read the San Francisco paper, right? Or what paper?
Well, I read I don't read the Wall Street Journal every day, but I read it. But I have several papers that I read. I'm not going to expose to you what they are. I don't want people putting me in a little pigeonhole. But I read them avidly. Um, yes, and I that's what I do.
Yeah. Well,
And also, of course, there are throughout the day in the industry that we're in. There are releases and commentaries daily. And so I read those and subscribe to those. Yeah, just about the industry, and it's funny because I'm wondering as I read them in the last 2 or 3 months whether the recession that they're talking about, or the slowdown, or the uncertainty due to the inflationary aspects, what that's going to do to our industry, and the wine and spirits industry, which is pretty bulletproof over history. Every time something happens, it seems that the industry is pretty stable and consistent and not as susceptible. Although I read an article just yesterday, I forget who wrote it, was saying that the 2008 meltdown recession absolutely took a big hit on wine and spirits, but only for about a year, and it came bouncing back. I think people may choose to buy less expensive drinks,
right.
And maybe more off premise than on premise selections and things like that. But it is, I do myself have a little bit of concern about the economy, not so much about Western Wine Services, but just the economy at large, because it has got a little uncertain. In the political environment, I'm not a great supporter of currently. So I'm hoping that we get through that in 2023, and that we don't see any adverse downturns for my customers, who I store for.
Right.
I want them to be widely successful.
Yeah. Well, this is awesome. So, what is the best way for potential clients to get in touch with you to find out more about Western Wine Services?
So they can reach out to me. Do you mean with an email address, or what are you asking me
It's
there?
up to you, Steve. I know. I mean, you're running 10 warehouses. I'm going to put the Western Carriers website on our show notes. We have show notes where
Okay.
anything we mentioned, we'll have that.
Yeah.
But just any other way, I don't want to share too much because there's millions of people listen to this. it's more like a few hundred, including my mom. But like, if somebody is definitely interested, they got 5,000 cases or more, and they want to find out more about what's the best way.
And if you haven't got 5,000 cases, but you're going to have a lot more than that in a fairly short time, I make a judgment on that. So don't be excluded entirely.
Okay.
Please. They can call me, or my email is probably the best.
Okay.
Which is steve.waller@westerncarriers.com. We use Western Carriers because that's the name of the East Coast company, and we share the website and we share the email protocol. So that's why it's called Western Carriers out there. We're called Western Wine Services, which is a more descriptive name. They are not a carrier per se, well, they do some, but they are in the storage business.
Right.
Their name comes from when they bought that company 50 years ago. It was Western Carriers, and they morphed from a carrier business into the storage business. So that's how that came about. But if you look for that, and the website, of course, westerncarriers.com, or my email. Certainly, I answer my own phone, pick up every ring. So I'm pleased to
Unlike
help
some
anybody
people.
who's, yeah, unlike some companies and some things. So we stick with the old-fashioned way of answering the phone. I was taught that way back when at DHL, answer by the third ring, or otherwise you're in trouble. So, of course, that's gone the way of history now with most companies, but we still subscribe to that
So,
customer service.
mine is, I promise I'll get back to you within 2 hours, no matter what. And then if it
Okay.
takes me longer than 2 hours to get back to you, it means something happened to me. And
Okay.
you can always send me a text. I'll answer as fast as I can. But I love that. I love picking up the phone on the third ring. I mean, it's 2 hours. Like you said, the expectations have changed a little bit.
Right.
But we're talking about hiring a third party company that can actually answer the phone. But it's like,
Yeah.
would you rather talk to somebody else, or would you rather wait an
Right.
hour for me to call you back?
Yeah. No, you're right. Right.
So
No, you have a good. That's my experience with you too, Mark. Responsiveness.
yeah,
And it's amazing how businesses have lost track on that. We pay a lot of focus on responsive, either on email responsiveness too. So if you send an inquiry through email, you've got to get back to the customer. So
yeah,
our order processing people and our inbounds people and inventory people. I mean, we are on it all the time. Responsiveness to the customer. Yeah,
absolutely.
that's just basic
Yeah.
customer. Basic business acumen. But it's amazing how it's not followed by many businesses in the modern world.
Yeah, a lot of times we have to chase people for 2 or 3 days for a proposal. You know, we're looking for something and we send it. It goes to the sales department. It goes through engineering, wherever it goes, and then it gets lost. And unless we're following up, you know, where's our proposal? Where's our proposal? Where's our proposal?
Right. Right.
Doesn't happen.
All right.
So I really appreciate you coming on here, folks. We've been visiting, sharing information. Steve Waller's inspiring story. Great business advice, and man, this is really, I've been looking forward to this, but it's really been a pleasure to have you on.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Mark. I've enjoyed it very much.
Thanks for listening to the Tao of Pizza podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.